While I'm doing this, Lizzie, do you want to introduce yourself and then I'll introduce myself? That
Yeah,
way I'm
of course. So, for those of you who don't know, I am Lizzie Simpson. I'm the founder of the Emotional Wellbeing Company, and I'm also an accredited emotional freedom technique practitioner. And I help people with their emotional well-being. I help them to ditch the overwhelm and to reconnect with the parts of themselves that they've lost because of emotional overwhelm. I'm very passionate about the work that I do, and I'm very passionate about getting us all talking more about emotions. It's really, really important, as emotional well-being is the foundation of all of our success, but we don't often think about it like that. We often think about external things that we need to do to obtain our goals, to strive to be successful, and we don't often take time to check in with ourselves emotionally, because actually when we're out of balance emotionally, it affects all aspects of our life. So that's why I am obsessed with emotions, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see that all of my posts are about emotions. So yeah, how about you, Megan?
My name is Megan, obviously, and I am a life coach. I help people manage stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in their nervous systems, and just really doing that by paying attention to how your body feels, and then using those feelings inside of your body to cut off that thought cycle where you feel anxious and then you start telling yourself scary stories or awful stories about who you are or what you think other people think about you. So really breaking that connection. And then once we calm your body down, we can start looking at what's the actual truth? What do you want to believe? And help people start creating the stories that build them up and help them move forward rather than keeping them stuck and repeating the same anxious habits over and over again. So that's what I do. I am looking here. I just got a message on LinkedIn that the chat is disabled. Do I know how to fix that? I don't know. I'm going to try though. So, do you know how to fix that?
I think if you go on to the three dots into meeting settings, it should bring up in meeting settings that you can turn the chat on.
Okay.
I don't know if potentially if you make me a co-host as well, whether that will mean that I can do that too. Apologies, everyone. This is because I was obviously got on the call after you all because of my technical difficulties. So we would have ironed all of this out beforehand. So, this is the world we live in, isn't it? Sometimes the technology doesn't always
I'm going to make
support
you
us.
the host. How's that? Hit it.
Perfect. Okay, let's have a look.
There we go.
Meeting settings. Da-da-da-da. Okay, the chat, is it on now?
Yay! I see it.
Perfect. Amazing.
Can you all chat too? It says chat disabled for me.
Oh, that's so funny that it's disabled. Is it still disabled for everyone else?
It's still disabled for me. I can't access it.
That's so weird. Let me have a look. Uh, hmm. That is so weird.
Technology, man. I'm telling you what.
I know, right? I don't know why it's not giving me an option, because obviously it's showing us fine my end. So I don't know whether it's registering that the chat is disabled on my end. So I don't know whether I can necessarily turn it back on.
Well, I tell you what. If we want to talk, we will just use our actual voices. How's that?
Oh, okay.
And
Wait a
then go
second.
from there. And I will see if I can find an option really quick.
Has that come back on for you guys now? I've just changed something on my end. I
Yeah,
don't know. Yeah, is it on now?
check it.
Oh, it is? Great.
Yeah, can you do that?
Perfect. There you go. Amazing. Sorry, guys. As you can tell, this is why me and Megan do emotions and anxiety, and we don't work at
I was
Microsoft.
going to say, this is why we're not involved in technology across the board. So perfect. You've done it. Good job.
Amazing. So me and Megan, obviously, we want to spend most of the time together today tapping. But obviously, as Megan is the anxiety expert, Megan's just going to start us off a little bit with talking about anxiety. But actually, we want to make sure that this session is super interactive and that you get to spend the most time tapping. So yeah, I'll hand over to Megan, and then we'll just start the tapping probably in the next kind of 5 or 10 minutes, if that works for everyone.
Yeah, I will not keep you super long, but I do think that one of the things that's really important that was really important for me in my recovery. I had an anxiety disorder for 30-ish years, a very long time. And I was super anxious during that time. And the best way I could explain it to Like, I think even just looking back, explaining it to my mom was that my brain doesn't know how to explain how my body feels. So for me, mine tended to focus around my health or big, bad, scary diseases, all the things that, of course, I didn't want. And so every time I had a thing or a feeling, my brain would just start concocting stories about what was actually wrong with me or what I thought was wrong with me. And so I misinterpreted the way my body felt for a very long time. And anxiety in and of itself is really a feeling that is stored in all areas of your body. I think it's easy for us to think that it's all in our brains, and it's not. Anxiety is actually just a chemical reaction that you feel anywhere. You could feel it in your big toe if you needed to. Some people will be like, oh, every time I feel anxious, my hands feel tingly. If you've ever watched Ted Lasso, which is my favorite show in the entire world, you'll notice that he always starts doing this thing with his hands where he gets nervous and he does this. That's his sign that he's getting ready to have a panic attack. So whether you have panic attacks or you don't, whether you have anxiety attacks, which are not the same as panic attacks, those are just really long periods of intense anxiety, you'll notice it in your body. So instead of fearing our bodies and letting our brains run wild and create this story, what we need to do is we need to understand what's actually happening inside of ourselves. And that goes back to some really, I'll call it basic psychology that we never learned in the States as kids. Nobody taught us this. And I just think it's so valuable to know, because once you know what's happening inside of you, whether your story is that you're going to fail at a presentation at work, or that if you go to a concert, everybody will look at you and think you're weird, or something bad will happen, whatever your anxious thought is, it doesn't really matter. It's just your brain trying to protect you in really great ways, but also really awful ways. So it makes up stories to do that. And it all revolves around your safety. Maybe it's what other people think, or some horrible disease, or that you'll be trapped and be embarrassed. All of those things are very protective mechanisms, and it starts with what's happening inside of your brain. So we have an old brain, right? We have our old brain and our new brain. It's all in the same general area, right? But the front part of your brain is your thinking portion of your brain. And that part of your brain is relatively new in terms of evolution. But on the inside, there's this little tiny almond shaped part. It's called your amygdala. And your amygdala is the caveman of your brain. And this caveman just freaks out and overreacts to anything that it perceives as a threat. And that could be something silly. And like the sky looks weird. The color is off a little bit. It perceives a threat. It makes up stories. Or it might just make you feel really, really anxious and make you wonder what's wrong, even when you don't have a thought about it. But the amygdala's job is to perceive threats. So it's constantly scanning everything around you. And when it pings something that it's like, oh, that's different, that's weird, that's new, that person gave you a funny look, whatever it is that it perceives, and it remembers everything, even things that your thinking brain doesn't remember, it sends a message to another part of your brain. And that part of your brain, these two parts work really, really quickly together. It floods your body with hormones. And that is what causes you to feel anxious, because anxiety is really just a chemical reaction that you feel in your body. The problem here is not that this happens. The problem is that it's the fastest part of your brain. So because it's really, really in tune all the time and it's super fast, as soon as it reacts, you're already at a disadvantage, because once those chemicals get into your body, once the cortisol is there, once the adrenaline is there, once all of these things happen, that thinking part of your brain is shut off. And that's a survival mechanism. You don't need to think about, should I move from in front of the bus? Is it really going to hit me? You just jump back. Should I really not jump into the fire? Just don't touch hot things. So it's a great purpose, but it's outdated. We're not running around with saber-toothed tigers around us. We're not, we don't have the dangers that the cavemen or the lizards, whatever you want to go back to, experienced. Unfortunately, that hardware in our brain hasn't updated. So what we have to do is we have to teach ourselves to recognize, Oh, I know what's happening inside of my body. That feeling that makes my heart beat fast, that makes me sweaty, that makes me really confused, where I feel like I can't think straight. That's anxiety. And once you can call it out for what it is and not have it be a problem, there's some really simple solutions, some that Lizzie can teach you today, and some as simple as changing the way that you breathe, exhaling instead of holding your breath. Most people who are anxious just and they sort of breathe like this and they wonder why they can't get a good breath of air. And it's just because they haven't exhaled. So that's a great start. And that's a great thing to do on the fly. You can do it anywhere. No one will know because you have to breathe anyway. But what we're going to learn today is an overall way to kind of manage emotions, rewire your emotions. And it's totally based in science and facts. So even though it's not necessarily a mainstream technique right now, because we want this quick fix. Let's take a pill. Let's do this thing. This is a way to really help you rewire your nervous system quickly. So Lizzie and I do a lot of the same work in very different ways, and they work fantastic together. Like if you can combine these two modalities, you're set. And I think what's really important for you guys to know is that it doesn't have to take years in therapy to stop being anxious. I've seen it happen with clients in 2 to 3 weeks, and then we just take life as it comes and say, okay, how does that make you feel? Does that make you feel anxious or do you feel confident? All right, well, what would it be like to feel confident if you're feeling anxious? Once you learn how to handle those feelings, it's all better. And that's the key that I want you guys to know is that it's just learning to manage your body so that you don't have to try and figure out what is an anxious thought and what is a real thought, because your brain will always tell you everything is deadly, urgent, and you're likely to just fall over dead any second, which is not true. We know it's not true.
I love that. That was so well explained. And Megan's totally right. I think one interesting thing that's going to come up when we start the tapping is, and you probably do this subconsciously, but when you're talking about anxiety, you naturally place your hands on your chest. So just move that a little bit down. Naturally, when you're talking about it, so that's how we always start off tapping, because it's a really important part of our body to help us to ground when we get into the tapping. And actually, a lot of people, in fact, the majority of people that I've worked with in terms of clients who have come to me for anxiety, they always describe it being a feeling in their chest. And they might describe it in a different way, and they have different ways and means of expressing what that feels like, but it always comes back to the chest. So I just thought it was really beautiful, actually, Megan, that when you're talking about it, that naturally you kind of recognize that, and you were, when you're talking about your anxiety, you're touching your chest in that way, because our brain then makes these patterns. And actually, Megan probably didn't even realize she was consciously doing that then. But that's where her brain, when she talks about anxiety, will think, okay, yeah, that's where we can feel it. So that's where we want to go to. We want to help ourselves to ground. So we've probably got about 40-ish minutes together, maybe half an hour to 40 minutes. So let's get into the tapping, because I'm really excited to share this technique with you all. If you haven't done tapping before, that's absolutely fine. We're going to mirror together. So you're going to be copying everything that I do, and you're going to be repeating after me. So it's really, really simple. You do what I do, and I'll be pausing so that you've got a space to speak what I've said. It probably does help if everyone keeps their mics off, just so we're not feeding back to each other and we can hear the lag and everything. I am just going to share my screen with you, because tapping works really, really well when we where are we here, when we actually engage and you guys contribute. So you can use the chat if you guys feel comfortable sharing in the chat, because I'm just looking now and I don't think it's going to let me share my screen. Oh, this Zoom is really forsaking us today. So if you do feel comfortable, it's okay if you don't. Please drop in the box words that you would use to describe anxiety. So how you experience it. So it doesn't have to be scientific. It just has to be how you would identify with that anxious feeling. So if you could describe it as an icky, panicky feeling in my chest, then write that in the chat, whatever it is for you that describes that anxiety. I was going to do this over Mentimeter, but because I can't, oh, actually, I know how I can do it. 1 minute. Just because I obviously appreciate that a lot of the time we don't always love to share. Obviously, we're talking about anxiety, which can be a really personal thing. We don't always want to share in the chat what that is. So let me just see if I can share this photo. And if you want to, you can then, sorry, Megan, you are on this picture because I've just taken a screenshot. Can everybody see my screen?
No, you're fine.
So if you do want to, you don't want to put it in the chat, that's absolutely fine. Just scan the QR code on the screen. And this is anonymous. So if you scan the QR code, you can input and contribute, but without obviously putting a name to it. So I'm just going to give another kind of minute or so just to try that. But obviously if the chat is easier to contribute, that's also fine. Perfect. Thank you for contributing on Mentimeter. It does help us from my end as well, because I'll be incorporating this into the tapping. So when we start doing it, I can feed back how you're feeling, because the most important part of doing this kind of work is giving a voice to how you're feeling. A lot of the time we internalize how we're feeling. We don't like to talk about it. You know, how many times we've asked a friend, oh, how are you doing? And they go, I'm fine. But you can sense that they're not fine, but they just don't maybe have the words for it, or they're not quite sure about what speaking and about their feelings is actually going to do. So we just say, I'm fine, and we want to avoid it. So actually taking a step to acknowledge how we're feeling, and obviously within the context of this, how we're feeling when it comes to anxiety, it's a really important step so that we can start to break down those barriers that we hold around our feelings and emotions. Okay, perfect. What I'll do is I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'm keeping the chat open. And let's get into it. So we're just going to do a really slow round to begin with, because I understand that this is probably new to some of you, and your brain is going to be watching what we're doing and trying to learn the technique. But whether you're sitting or standing, I just want you to put your hands in this butterfly format, and I just want them to put some pressure on your chest. So I don't want it to be painful. It's not about hurting yourself or making you feel like you can't breathe. It's just about feeling the weight of your hands on your chest. I'm stood up, so I'm just going to kind of really feel my feet on the floor as I do this, and the pressure on my chest. And I just want you all to take a deep breath in for 4, and then out for 8 through the nose. And then again for me, in through the nose for 4. And out for 8. And one more time for me, in for 4, out for 8. Okay, so I gently just want you to open your eyes, and I just want you to start by tapping on the side of your hand. So I am right-handed, so I'm tapping on the side of my left hand, but if you are left-handed, you can tap on your right, whichever one is more comfortable. So just tapping on the side of your hand, I just want you to repeat after me. So even though I've been feeling anxious, I'm choosing to get curious about why. Even though I've been feeling anxious, I'm choosing to get curious about why. Even though I've been feeling anxious, I'm choosing to get curious about why. So I just want you to move to the top of the head. All this anxiety in my chest. And then onto the eyebrow point here. So it's just this part of your eyebrows. I get this sinking feeling in my stomach every time I'm anxious. Side of the eye. This anxiety makes me feel nauseous. Under the eye. It makes me feel short of breath. Under the nose. It's like a rushy feeling. On the chin for me. All this anxiety in my body and mind. And then on the collar point, which is just under your collarbone in the centre of your chest. Anxiety just feels so fast for me. Under the arm. I just get such a tight chest when I'm feeling anxious. Top of the head. All this anxiety. And then on the eyebrow point again, I can feel it in my body and chest. And then side of the eye. It's like a sinking feeling in my stomach. Under the eye. And I get a tight chest. Under the nose. I just feel so rushy when I'm anxious. On the chin. It's almost like a nauseous feeling. On the collar point, all this anxiety rushing through my body. Under the arm. I'm taking time to sit with this now. Top of the head. And maybe I've had a good week and I've not felt that anxious. On the eyebrow point. But I'm sitting with myself and thinking about what does make me anxious. Side of the eye. Taking time to ground into my body. Under the eye. Taking time to recognize where this anxiety feeling is sitting. Under the nose. Recognizing that it makes me feel short of breath. On the chin. Recognizing that my chest can feel tight and rushy. On the collar point. And it constricts my breathing. Under the arm. And I can sometimes feel it in my stomach. Top of the head. All these feelings of anxiety. On the eyebrow point. I'm taking a second to recognize what's causing me to feel anxious. Side of the eye. And I still might not know fully what's making me feel anxious. Under the eye. And that's okay. Under the nose. Because I'm just taking the time to ground into myself. On the chin. And thinking about all of the parts of my body that are affected by my anxiety. On the collar point. I'm telling myself that it's safe to talk about my anxiety. Under the arm. It's safe to hold space for myself when it comes to my anxiety. Top of the head. Acknowledging these feelings starts to take their power away. On the eyebrow point. And it helps me to feel a bit calmer. Side of the eye. I'm just recognizing how I feel when I'm anxious. Under the eyes. And maybe thinking about some situations that have happened recently. Under the nose. That I recognize made me anxious. On the chin. And I'm getting curious about anything that's coming to mind. On the collar point. About those situations and what might have caused me to feel anxious. Under the arm. My intention is just to get curious right now. Top of the head. Acknowledging that I deserve to sit with this. On the eyebrow point. And acknowledging any of the other emotions or thoughts that are coming up as I say these words. Side of the eye. And recognizing that some of them might feel a bit overwhelming. Under the eye. And that's okay. under the nose. I'm just taking the time to sit with myself. On the chin. And shed light on how my anxiety makes me feel. On the collar point, recognizing that I'm taking its power away with every tap. Under the arm. And also recognizing that I get to do this at my own pace. Top of the head. Because no one knows me quite like I do. On the eyebrow point. I'm just committed to sitting with myself in this session. Side of the eye. And thinking about how my anxiety makes me feel. Under the eye. Even if I'm not feeling particularly anxious today. Under the nose. I am just a human being and I probably will feel anxious again. On the chin. So I'm taking the time to learn how I can manage my anxiety when it hits properly. On the collar point. And taking time to speak aloud how my anxiety makes me feel is really helping. Under the arm. The fact my anxiety makes me feel like I'm always in a rush. Top of the head. That it always comes over me thick and fast. Eyebrow point. And before I know it, I'm in the middle of anxiety. Side of the eye. With that sinking feeling in my stomach. Under the eye. With that tight, rushy feeling in my chest. Under the nose. Feeling nauseous and short of breath. On the chin. Feeling like I need to get out of the situation I'm in. On the collar point. Even if it's a situation I genuinely want to be in. Under the arm. When my anxiety hits, it takes over. Top of the head. It can feel so debilitating some days. On the eyebrow point. Some days it feels impossible to manage. Side of the eye. And part of me feels skeptical about talking about the symptoms of my anxiety. Under the eye. As I don't want to feel more anxious. Under the nose. And it kind of goes against everything I've been taught. On the chin. I shouldn't be talking about my feelings if I don't like them. If I just ignore my anxiety, it'll go away one day. Under the arm. If I tell people I'm anxious, I'm worried what they'll think. On top of the head. All this anxiety. On the eyebrow point. All this anxiety. Side of the eye. All this anxiety. And then under the eye for me, all of this anxiety. Under the nose, all of this anxiety. On the chin, all of this anxiety. On the collar point for me, all of this anxiety. Under the arm for me, all of this anxiety. So I just want you to squeeze your wrist and just take a deep breath in for 4. And then out for 8 through your nose. So I'm just going to give you till 36 minutes past yeah, kind of 2-3 minutes. If anything came up for you while you were tapping, then make a note of it. As what tends to happen is that our brain starts to communicate with us as the tapping starts to regulate our nervous system. So it might start to fire different thoughts off around your anxiety that maybe you've not thought of before. Obviously, if this is your very first time tapping, a lot of the time we can sit in the whole, okay, this is the routine, and we're kind of very much in our learning brain. But if anything did come up, I would be and just invite you to make a note of it just for your own kind of takeaways. And then we're going to do a little bit more tapping in a second.
Something I think is really important that you might want to pay attention to when you get into the layers of emotions, because anxiety, even though we like to say I'm anxious and we consider it one emotion, often what I find is that people are having a lot of emotions at once, and it's a lot of feelings mixed up. And almost every single time, one of those emotions is love. And I
Mm-hmm.
just would challenge you to pay attention to individual emotions, because it might be anger, it might be grief, it might be embarrassment, it might be sadness, it might be love, it might be excitement, which feels the exact same as anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And just really get curious about all of those, because anxiety in and of itself is technically an emotion, but it's not just one emotion most of the
Yeah,
time.
for sure. Yeah, I think what Megan was saying at the start as well about anxiety, kind of, it's very heavily based on like a physiological response in our bodies. And that's why tapping's so great, because obviously it deals with the body and the mind. But with exactly what Megan said, actually, what starts to come up is the anxiety is the presenting symptom. So if you think about it like an iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is always the anxiety and the physical feeling. Because when we feel physical discomfort or pain in our bodies, we can't ignore it, right? We can physically feel it. And actually, as you tap and you feel calmer, those messages from your mind and your body start to come up, and they are those emotions. And actually, the whole premise of EFT is that we get to the root of what is making those emotions stay so prevalent in our lives, and why those emotions are fueling different responses and reactions to different situations, even if
Mhm.
the root of that situation looks nothing like the situations in our life today that trigger these anxious feelings. So that's why it's really great. And obviously, everybody does this at their own pace. Some people have really quick kind of realizations and breakthroughs and doing the tapping for 5 minutes. Some people it takes, 5 hours worth of it before they can get there. And that's why it's so important to go at your own pace with this kind of work, because what we don't want to do is shame ourselves into action. Okay. We don't want to be like, okay, I feel anxious. I need an outward solution. I need to fix myself. It's not about that. It's about treating yourself, as you would a 5-year-old. Do you want to go gentle? You want to go slow? This is a learning process for so many of us, as unfortunately we weren't taught how to handle these kind of emotions when we were kids. So we're having to do this work as adults, but we're also blessed, I think, to be able to do this as well.
And I will make sure that I send out the replay. It might not be today because I do have to travel later today, but I will make sure that everyone who's here will get the replay so that you all can watch this again and go through Lizzie's tapping and scoot through this part. Maybe if you're like, I don't need to listen to them talk to this about this again, but I will make sure that you get the tapping video so that you can practice it if it does take more than once to go through. So
Amazing. So what I'm going to do now is, as I'm obviously conscious that we're kind of getting slightly towards the end of the session, and I don't want to leave anybody kind of sat in the pit of feeling anxious. So what the process that I always guide my clients through is, we always start with acknowledgement, which is what we've started to do. And that process is, like I've mentioned, is a different time length for each of us because we're all different. But the purpose of doing that is so that we can get to the root of the emotions or the feelings and start to address what's going on for us there. So that's not something we're going to be doing in today's session. But as we tend to work with the EFT to address what's going on there, we then start to release the emotions. So all of these emotions that are staying stuck in our system start to dissipate as we feel through them. And the last part of the process is to integrate. So we want to be thinking about, so for example, if anybody struggles with anxiety before doing a presentation, but actually doing a presentation is part of your job and it's something that you need to do, you need to get better at, we want to integrate, once we've worked through those emotions, how we want to feel instead. So you might think, I want to feel really confident when I walk on stage, or I want to feel really confident when I'm delivering the Zoom presentation to my boss, or whatever it is. So that part is the integration. So as it's Friday afternoon and all of us deserve to go into the weekend feeling a little bit brighter, as I'm sure you've all had really hectic and busy weeks, I know I have, I'm just going to share the QR code on screen, and this time it's for integration. So I just really wanted to make it that clear then. It's not about kind of jumping ahead to say, okay, I've got these anxious feelings, but I want to feel really confident, so I'm going to feel confident straight away. You know, it's unfortunate with our emotions, we have to go through the whole process of that. But actually, a little bit of positivity has never harmed us. So I would love to invite you to scan the QR code, and let me know what's one positive thing you want to tell yourself today. It can be in relation to your anxiety feelings. If you've got a goal in mind with where you want to get to with your anxiety and you want to tell yourself that, put that in. If actually it's just that you want to say, I've absolutely smashed life this week and I'm really proud of myself for that, I've been juggling everything, send that in. Whatever kind of feel goodness that you want to let yourself know today, and just take this moment to celebrate yourself. So if you scan the QR code, it's all anonymous. So it's not, I can't see who is contributing what. So I would really love for you to engage, and then I can feed this back into the tapping for the last kind of 15-20 minutes of our session today. Obviously, if you want to use the chat, you can also use the chat, that's fine. I just get that sometimes we don't always want to share and have our names put to things in these sessions, because I get that working with our feelings and emotions is a very personal thing. But I would also say on that note, that it's something that does unite us, because every single human being on this planet experiences emotions in some capacity or another. And I am obviously really passionate about getting us talking about more emotions. So I just give till 41, just to see if there's anything further that people want to contribute. I know that you can't see me at the minute. I'm aware. I've just put my picture off to the side just so that you can see the QR code. But when we do the tapping, I will come back on screen, I promise. Yeah, these are really great. That the ones that are coming through on Mentimeter. And as I said, it is anonymous, so I can't tell which one of you has submitted what. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. Thank you so much for sharing that with me, Sally. I think that that's something that a lot of us who have our own businesses and are self-employed can relate to. Megan was just saying at the start of the call today that she's got a stinking cold as well, and she's not been feeling great. And it's a lot, isn't it, when you have that kind of very real reality of a situation that actually, if we don't work because we're not well, we don't get paid. So I totally resonate with that. And thank you so much for contributing that in the chat. I really do appreciate it. Yeah, I love that, Megan, telling myself that I can do new things. Okay, perfect. Right, I'm going to come back on screen and put the QR code off, and then we can get back into the tapping. Perfect. Can you all see me again now? Yes, can you see me? Yep. Perfect. Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do again, so just going to ground back into the tapping, because obviously we kind of come out of the flow of it. So same again, I just want you to put your hands together in a butterfly formation. I just want you to put some pressure on your chest, but it's not here to hurt you. It's just here to make you feel the weight of your hands on your chest. And I just want you to take a deep breath in for 4. And out for 8. And in for 4. And out for 8. And one more time for me, in for 4. And out for 8. So tapping on the side of the hand again. So even though I've acknowledged my anxiety, I'm choosing to lean into something more positive. So even though I've acknowledged my anxiety, I'm choosing to remind myself that it's not all of me. So even though I've taken time to acknowledge my anxiety, I'm choosing to remind myself that it doesn't define me. Top of the head. I'm reminding myself that it's okay to take time for rest. On the eyebrow point. My energy's been low, but I'm only just a human being. Side of the eye. I can still achieve things when I'm not feeling 100%. Under the eye. And my anxiety doesn't define me. Under the nose. And I'm really proud of myself for taking the time and space to sit with my anxiety. On the chin. And I'm recognizing that I've got a lot of external pressures that might be triggering my anxiety. On the collar point. But I've overcome these kind of challenges before. Under the arm. And I know I can do it again. Top of the head. I've achieved so many things this week that my past self just never would have been capable of. On the eyebrow point. And I'm just so incredibly proud of myself for that. Side of the eye. And I can still do new and exciting things. Under the eye. Even with my anxiety. Under the nose. I recognize that anxiety and excitement feel very much the same. On the chin. And I feel excited about doing new things. On the collar point. And there's lots of external things that might be weighing on my anxiety. Under the arm. But I've taken time out of my busy life. Top of the head for me. To sit with myself this afternoon. On the eyebrow point. When maybe my fight or flight system and anxiety was telling me that I haven't got time for this. Side of the eye. Telling me that I need to be working harder. Under the eye. And that sitting and tapping on my face won't solve my problems. Under the nose. But I've defied all of those thoughts anyway. On the chin. And I've taken time out for me. On the collar point. Which can be anxiety inducing in itself. Under the arm. But I've done it anyway. Top of the head. I've done something new. Eyebrow point. I've sat with myself and I'm proud of myself for that. Side of the eye. And I'm taking a second to think about how far I've come with my anxiety. Under the eye. Thinking about everything I've accomplished despite my anxiety. Under the nose. And letting myself know that rest is important. On the chin. And taking time for me is important. On the collar point. And even though it feels scary to do this when I've got so many responsibilities all weighing on my shoulders. Under the arm. I'm doing it anyway because I know it's good for me. Top of the head. Taking time to try new things. On the eyebrow point. And I'm going to create time for my own rest. Side of the eye. I'm recognizing that I accomplish so much each and every day. Under the eye. Even when my energy's low. under the nose. I'm recognising that taking time for me is so important. On the chin. And I've done that today and I'm proud. On the collar point. And those big dreams that I have in my mind, under the arm, about where I want to go in my life and career and business. Top of the head. The ones that make my anxiety go, eek. Eyebrow point. I know I can achieve them. Side of the eye. And I've already got the ball rolling. Under the eye. Because I've taken time to sit with my anxiety today. Under the nose. Which is such a courageous act in itself. On the chin. And I've done it in a group setting. On the collar point. Which can feel anxiety inducing in itself. Under the arm. I've done it because I wanted to. Top of the head. And that fills my cup up. On the eyebrow point. Just taking a second to think about how proud I am of myself. Side of the eye. I'm recognizing that I'm doing a great job. Under the eye. Even if my brain is telling me I'm not. Under the nose. I'll take time in the future to sit with that part of my brain that's not on board with that. On the chin. But right now I'm celebrating me. On the collar point. Telling myself that it's okay to rest. Under the arm. And invite myself to get curious about how I can change my ways of working. Top of the head. If they're not quite suiting me. On the eyebrow point. I'm recognizing that having low energy is just part of being a human being. Side of the eye. And I'm trying my best to honour that. Under the eye. Taking a second to think about the things I'm proud of this week. Under the nose. And all of the things I have achieved despite my anxiety. On the chin. And taking a second to thank my anxiety for trying to keep me safe. On the collar point. Whilst it might be misguided, its intentions are good. Under the arm. Reminding myself that my anxiety is not the whole of me. Top of the head. That have so much to offer. On the eyebrow point. And I've already achieved so much. Side of the eye. Despite my anxiety. Under the eye. And the more time I take for myself, the better I'm going to get at that. Under the nose. Recognizing that I'm definitely not alone in this. On the chin. I'm feeling proud of myself for showing up today. On the collar point. And knowing that I can achieve all of those goals and dreams. Under the arm. Despite my anxiety. Okay, so just squeeze the wrist and take a deep breath in. In for 4. And then out for 8. I just want to just take a second just to kind of come back into the room. I am obviously really conscious that it's Friday afternoon, and I'm really so very grateful that so many of you turned up today, as it's you know, it's Friday afternoon in the UK. Obviously, it's the start of the day over in the US. But I just really want to say that actually taking time to do this kind of thing is a courageous act in itself, because I've obviously mentioned it before, but we aren't taught to take time for this. And actually, weirdly, I kind of speaking to Sally's point of obviously being a self-employed, it's a very kind of unique situation to be in, because you do feel that you have to be on 24/7, because if you're not on, the business is not on, it's not making money. And actually tearing ourselves away from that mindset and sitting with ourselves is so needed, but it's actually quite a difficult thing to do, and we often find a lot of resistance around it. So I just want you all to give yourselves a pat on the back for that, because it's not, you know, tapping is such a simple technique when you get into it, but actually setting the ball rolling with it can be the hardest part. So thank you so much for today.
Yes, thank you guys so much for coming. I hope that you got a lot out of this. Please, I mean, if you found us on, I'm assuming you found us on LinkedIn, although I did post on Facebook. Please send connection requests if I'm not connected with you. I would love to be. I would love to get to know you better. And so I'm going to put a link to my website on here and let you know that I do offer a free audit. It's not a sales call or anything like that, where you can come in and we can just get a bird's eye view of your life and take a look at all the areas of where anxiety might be sneaking in. And it just helps you see what's going well, which is very important to see. Maybe what's sticky or what's not going well. And it helps you see the areas of your life that need some attention. So if you're interested in that, it's free. Again, it's just a service that I provide for you to be able to take a really broad scope look at your life so that you know where to start. And so I will put that in there, and you're welcome to look at that if you're interested. But I would love to connect with you.
Perfect. Yeah, likewise. If we're not connected, I think I am connected with quite a few of you on LinkedIn, but if not, please do send a connection request. As you know, you want to talk more about emotions, you know me, you know, chatting about emotions.
Yes.
But yeah, I hope you all have an absolutely incredible weekend and a nice evening. And yeah, I hope today has been beneficial. I hope you've enjoyed it, even if it's just giving you that kind of minute of sitting with yourself and taking a breather from the craziness of this world. So thank you so much, guys, for joining.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Yes, everyone have a fab weekend, and hopefully catch up with some of you soon.